AMD announced their quarterly results for the second quarter 2020 and they absolutely crushed it. So if you're an AMD shareholder, congratulations. Now, full disclosure, I am an AMD shareholder. I have AMD shares. I don't have any Intel shares. I do have Nvidia shares, but this is not really a channel for financial information. We're just going to really look at the financial results to see if there are any implications on a gaming level. At the time, I tweeted out, AMD totally killed it, up 26% year on year quarterly results. With next gen consoles Zen 3 and RDNA 2 to come, buckle up. So I really think that there's more room for growth with AMD, and they have a lot of products in the pipeline. Now, this could probably all be factored into the price anyway at the moment, but with Intel's recent announcements of their delay for the 7nm process into 2022, this really opens the door for AMD to get a grip on the market. Now, just a few hours before they released their results, I tweeted out to a retired engineer, it will be interesting. On the one hand, I recall they lowered their guidance. On the other, PC has been doing very well in general due to work from home. Yeah, it was really uncertain before they announced results, but Lisa Su the next morning appeared on CNBC and she talked about the reason for lowering their guidance.
Well, that did not seem to be the case when you reported last. I felt that when you decided that you shied away from guidance, you had gotten away from the notion that you had a long-term plan. Obviously, that's changed. What occurred to make it so that you have a vision that I didn't feel you had last quarter?
Well, I think what we have is, there are a lot of uncertainties, right? When you look at the macro, when you look at the impact of COVID-19, we wanted to make certain that we understood all of the various puts and takes. But what came together, for us in the second quarter is a couple things. First of all, our server business had its highest ever quarter. We had a number of the top cloud manufacturers really ramp on our products for their most essential services. We had our PC business. The fact is, PCs are now essential. And so we had our notebook business with the highest ever quarter where, we saw a strong ramp across. And then now as we look through the second half of the year, look, there's no question there's a lot of uncertainty. We're watching like everybody is what happens in the macro. But we feel good about the markets. We feel good that the PC market looks strong. We have a great gaming cycle that's coming up with the new game consoles, and our data center business also looks strong. And so, we look at that and we say, hey, despite the uncertainty, we have a very strong roadmap. Our customers want, to partner more deeply, and we see revenue, growing now 32% year over year.
So Lisa Su was saying that there was a lot of uncertainty in the market, but I really think that the uncertainty was more to do with the production side of the things rather than the actual consumer side of the market. With the consumer side, we could foresee that there would probably be a lot of people work from home, so the demand would have been great. But getting the product to consumers would have been the issue, and keeping inventories full when they would have been out of stock, that was the challenge for AMD. And, with the pandemic, there would have been a lot of issues getting components because there would have been more demand everywhere and the price increases everywhere with getting parts. I think that could have had an impact on the global supply chain, and whether that would have been delays or increase in price and increase in cost of manufacturing, that was probably why she lowered guidance. So let's have a look at the quarterly results and see how they did so well. And you can see with quarter 2 2019, the revenue was $1.5 billion. And in quarter 2 2020, the revenue was $1.9 billion. And the year-on-year growth was up 26%, which is a huge result, especially for a mature market such as PCs, with gaming and computing. You would sort of see slower changes usually than this, but Ryzen's had such huge strength in the market, especially with a lot of the influence just constantly saying Ryzen, Ryzen, Ryzen all the time. And I think that would have had a huge impact, especially with the COVID-19, people searching online to see, well, what should I buy now? What desktop or what CPU should I be getting? And all of the influencers like Jay's 2 Cents and Linus and Bitwit and Paul's Hardware, everybody is saying just get Ryzen, and that's probably had a huge impact on the bottom line. Now they also say that the operating income is was $59 million in Q2 of 2019, and it went up to $173 million in 2020. And they don't exactly say where this comes from, but that could probably be the fact that a lot more people are buying. There's a lesser need for AMD to discount their products, and with bigger volumes, they would probably get cheaper production. So this is the Q2 2020 segment results, and we can see clearly where the growth was coming from. And we have computing and graphics segments, and in Q2 2019 it was $940 million, but in Q2 2020 this jumped to $1.3 billion, so year-on-year result was up 45%. Most of this is down to Ryzen CPUs. They've been performing amazing, and all of the influencers are just saying Ryzen all the time. Now, enterprise, embedded, and semi-custom, the quarterly result from year on year stayed about the same, 591 million to 565 million. But the quarter-on-quarter result from Q1 2020 saw a huge improvement from 348 million to 565 million. So Lisa Su attributed some of the growth to this as well, the fact that it was up a record 62%. Now they've also outlined their reasons for their growth, and they say that the revenue of 1.37 billion was up 45% year on year, driven by strong Ryzen processor sales, and down 5% quarter on quarter due to lower graphics processor sales. And again, that's mostly because the fact that they didn't release any new GPUs. And they say that it was the highest client processor revenue in more than 12 years, and they had a record quarterly notebook processor unit shipments and revenue. If we just jump down to the strategic news and highlights, 50 plus Ryzen 4000 notebooks in market, launching another 30 plus ultra thin premium gaming and commercial OEM notebooks. AMD has such a strong APU where they have strong graphics performance with their APUs that I think once they get to a level where they can get 1080p graphics at 60 frames per second, which would probably require about 3 to 4 teraflops of computing power, we're going to get a whole new segment of the market where a lot of people are going to buy ultra thin notebooks for gaming. And I really see a huge growth once we hit that performance mark. Now, they also say that they're on track to launch Zen 3 CPUs, RDNA 2 GPUs, and new CDNA data center GPU architecture in late 2020. So I don't think it will just be server chips. It looks as though it will also be desktop chips as well. Now, the enterprise, embedded, and semi-custom segment, so that area is not something that I'm too familiar with, but they do say that they have begun initial production of next-gen game console system on chips for Sony PlayStation 5 and Microsoft Xbox Series X. So while this is a great quarter for AMD, I don't think that it was specifically to do with the quarter's events, even though that would have helped the bottom line. I don't think it was just because of COVID-19, but more the fact that they've had a long-term strategy from the beginning, and that was to do with Ryzen. And with Ryzen, they hypothesized from the beginning that with production, they were going to double down on people who were going to use these CPUs for work and for production loads. And that was where they were going to hit the market. And that gaming was also going to be something that they would cater for, but they would cater for the all-round person who would need the CPU for everything. And as we can see, even though their single core performance was lagging a little bit from the first gen, they were able to improve that due to the manufacturing process. So when they went from 14 nanometer to 7 nanometer, they got increases, and with each generation of architecture, they were able to slowly improve the speed performance on single core. And now there's not much of a difference between the Intel single core performance and the AMD single core performance. There probably is about a 10% difference. And with Intel's delay for their manufacturing process, we could probably see Zen 3 take the lead in single core performance when it releases at the end of the year. So Ryzen have been slowly chipping away at Intel's single core performance, but also the fact that the whole concept or the whole architecture from the beginning was to use more cores and more threads, and that was to do with the fact that this would help people with their production work. If you were an AMD shareholder from the beginning, congratulations, you are probably a millionaire right now. But for the rest of us, I still see that there's plenty of growth in AMD in the next year or so. I think there's a period of dominance for AMD. In regards to the Q2 2020 results, they had an extremely positive set of results, and that's probably down to their extremely impressive long-term plan.